It is a strength of our society that it is both diverse and inclusive. There is always a very small minority of people who will seek an excuse to use violence and disorder.
Unbelievable. That was the sentencing of the wife of a Tory MP who has been sent to prison for a Facebook post. The Black Belt barrister did a great video on the sentencing, in which he said that as far as the sentencing was concerned, the judge was spot on in following the letter of the law. However, he didn't delve deeper into the fact the judge said diversity is our strength as he sentenced her. That alone is incontrovertible proof that it was political. Two-tier justice. Put aside the harshness of the sentence and whether you agree with that or not for 1 minute. What place is it for the judge or the law to say it is a strength of our society that it is both diverse and inclusive? Is he a judge or a sociology professor now? Why doesn't he stick to the legal guidelines when sentencing her? Why does he need to give his opinions on what is or isn't a strength of our society? He's telling her she's gone against his diversity and inclusion beliefs as he sentences her. Look, some of the violence at those riots was disgusting. Some of the racist attacks were sickening acts of violence. I am not defending them. Those responsible were rightly arrested. But over 1,000 people were arrested within a matter of weeks, some for online comments, with one teenage female in court for buying and distributing eggs and water to the rioters. Yet, we saw massive gangs of Muslim lads take to the streets in Birmingham and Rochdale. There is footage of white men being savagely beaten by a mob of them. Why has only one who kicked the pub door in been sentenced to 20 months in prison? Even then, the judge said, as he sentenced him, it was no doubt a pub full of people from a wide range of ethnic backgrounds. So, if it had been a pub full of white people, would that have justified the attack? Why is it the case that all violence isn't treated equally? Reform MP Richard Tice called this out, and a government MP accused him of stirring up hatred. In other words, what the government is saying, when a Muslim mob rampages through the streets and attacks a pub, with several of them savagely kicking a white guy to the ground, that's more acceptable because it's in self-defense of the community. This is because the law is not there to treat everyone equally. It is there to give special protection to what it considers minority groups. Muslims are considered a minority oppressed group, which means they'll be treated more leniently than the majority white population who are considered far-right oppressors. That's the reality. Anyway, just watch the sentencing for yourself.
Lucy Conley, you've pleaded guilty to the offence of distributing material with the intention of stirring up racial hatred. Sadly, this is one of a number of cases that this court has had to deal with, arising from the civil unrest following the very tragic events in Southport on the 29th of July of this year. As everyone is aware, some people used that tragedy as an opportunity to sow division and hatred, often using social media, leading to a number of towns and cities being disfigured by mindless and racist violence, intimidation and damage, which has been summarised by the prosecution today. It is a strength of our society that it is both diverse and inclusive. There is always a very small minority of people who will seek an excuse to use violence and disorder, causing injury, damage, loss and fear to wholly innocent members of the public. And sentences for those who incite racial hatred and disharmony in our society are intended both to punish and to deter. At 8:30 in the evening on the 29th of July of this year, You used the social media platform, then known as Twitter, to publish the following, quote, "Mass deportation now. Set fire to all the hotels full of the bastards for all I care. While you're at it, take the treacherous government and politicians with them. I feel physically sick knowing what these families will now have to endure. If that makes me racist, so be it." Quote. When you published those words, you were well aware of how volatile the situation was. As everyone is aware, that volatility led to serious disorder in a number of areas of the country where mindless violence was used to cause injury and damage to wholly innocent members of the public and to their properties. Your message was widely read. It was viewed 310,000 times with 940 reposts, 58 quotes, and 113 bookmarks. By the time you were arrested on the 6th of August of this year, you had deleted the account. From inquiries made by the police, they were able to establish that the individual tweet, the subject of this offence, remained available for at least 3.5 hours. The police were, however, able to trace other tweets that you had sent both before and after the 29th of July, which included further racist remarks. On the 5th of August, the day before you were arrested, you sent a WhatsApp message which included, quote, "Raging tweet about burning down hotels has bit me on the arse, LOL," which is commonly understood to mean laugh out loud. You also messaged that if inquiries of you were made, you would deny you were responsible for the message, and if you were arrested, you would, quote, "play the mental health card," quote. I have to apply the Sentencing Council guidelines for this offence. In relation to your culpability, this is clearly a Category A case, as both prosecution and your counsel agree, because you intended to incite serious violence. In relation to harm, it's again agreed, correctly, that what you did encouraged activity which threatened or endangered life, and therefore falls within Category 1. There is also a further relevant factor in relation to harm, in that you sought, and indeed achieved, widespread dissemination of your statement by posting it on social media. The starting point, therefore, after a trial is one of 3 years' imprisonment. There is a further significant aggravating factor, namely the timing of the publication, when there was obviously a particularly sensitive social climate. It would be difficult to think of a more sensitive such time than during the evening of the 29th of July of this year. All of those factors would require a significant increase in the sentence beyond the starting point. As to mitigation, you are now 41 years of age. It's clearly a mitigating factor that you have no previous convictions. I've also read the character references on your behalf from those who know you. They speak of a caring person, including those for whom you acted as a childminder for their children. You have a good family and a young daughter who is undoubtedly missing you terribly. I also take into account that this will be the first time you have been in prison and the present circumstances. In relation to the offence, I have regard to the fact that although it was widely read, you did not repeat any such statement and in due course deleted it, and you sent some messages to the effect that violence was not the answer. You have had tragedy in your own life with the loss of your very young child some years ago. I've read the psychiatric report from some 12 years ago, as to the psychiatric difficulties you then suffered. I accept that you still very keenly feel that loss. There is no recent psychiatric evidence, and whilst you may well have understood the grief of those who suffered their own tragic losses in Southport, you did not send a message of understanding and comfort, but rather an incitement to hatred. There's no evidence of any mental disorder having any material effect on you committing this offence. Similarly, while I accept you regret your actions and their effect upon you, and I have been referred to messages in which you say that you disagree with racism and violence, it's clear from the evidence of your own words in the days following your actions, what you said to the police and what you said to the probation officer, that you have little insight into or acceptance of your actions. I have to balance all of those factors. The minimum sentence after a trial for this offence would have been 3.5 years imprisonment. You pleaded guilty at the plea and case management hearing, and you are therefore entitled to a reduction in that sentence of 25%. The sentence on count 1, therefore, is one of 31 months imprisonment. You will serve 40% of that sentence,